Okay, in today's episode, we have one of the most successful mining executives and really proponents of investing in silver, and that's Keith Neumeyer. He is the CEO of First Majestic Silver. He's also involved in a company we've spoken on recently, which is Snowline. And all in all, probably one of the most well-known and respected silver executives and mining executives out there. So we're going to be discussing his views on gold, silver, and we're going to be talking about the markets. So make sure that you hit the like button on this side right over there and this side right over there. Give us your First Majestic price prediction for 2021 in the comments right there down below, and we'll dive right into this video. It's good to see you, Keith.
Hey, Jake, it's been a long time. It's a pleasure having a chance to chat with you again.
Yeah, it's interesting time right now too, and nobody really knows what to expect in the markets moving forward. There's talks about that the government is going to step the printing presses into high gear, and we'll see this kind of reinflation trade. There's infrastructure bill discussing, at least in the United States. My personal feeling is they're going to have to do a lot of those infrastructure bills to quote unquote stimulate, and that should be good for silver as well as this electric vehicle renewable movement. Maybe that's where a lot of infrastructure will go. But what's your personal opinions when you're looking out, your expectations with the markets, with the metals moving forward?
Well, the overall market, depends on what market you want to talk about. Like the U.S. market is really the key market on the planet, and it's been on fire for the last couple of years. Everyone knows that. So, but it's now rolling over in my view. I think we're likely going to see, a fairly large decline in the stock market sometime later this year. And that could bring all stocks down, even the mining stocks. But if you go back and look at what happened in 2002, 2003, and also in 2008, 2009, the first sectors that actually moved were the mining stocks, and they have over the decades have always proven to be really the place to be to keep your wealth somewhat intact, and it's worked for me for 35 years, but you have to be nimble. You have to trade these stocks, and you and I have spoken about this before. If you're up 300%, 400% or 500% on a stock, you should be selling half of it and waiting for that decline, because the mining sector is cyclical, the stock market is cyclical, and you've heard from Rick Rule many times and myself that you need to have a 10-year view on investing in resource stocks, because that's how long these bull markets last. This bull market started, let's call it January 2016 for whatever, you could call it December 2015 if you wish. But going out 10 years from that point, you're in 2025. And that's kind of the time frame that I'm looking at. So, I wouldn't be looking at this time to be liquidating. I'd be looking at opportunities to be buying.
And do you think that this fear trade has to resume for the next leg higher in gold and silver? Because you said, looking back at previous times, there's been these sell-offs, and then we see gold and silver in the miners and commodities. They move quick. After we kind of saw that in March 2020, it was gold and silver were the first things to really start moving, and they had an epic rally into August. So do you think that for silver to take the next leg higher, whether that's $35, whether it's approaching and revisiting those all-time highs, but just to stay above 30 and clear that, does there need to be a resumption of a short-term fear trade, and then there's that shift back into it for the next leg up?
I look at this as more of a longer term cycle than just a trade like that. I compare this to really 2000, 2001. If you go back to, the dot-com bubble and the Y2K, probably your listeners don't remember what Y2K was, but that was a pretty funny time. And it's very similar to, the SPAC market. The similarities between SPACs and Y2K are just phenomenal. And so here we saw the NASDAQ go up 100% from 97 to 2000, peaking out at 5,000 in March of 2000, and then everything just crashed from there. And within 3 years, the NASDAQ was down 80%, and it wasn't until 2015 that the NASDAQ actually went through 5,000 again. So it took almost 12 years for the NASDAQ to reach its old high. And that's the kind of market I think we're going into. And that's when the miners and the metals just exploded. And we saw silver go from $5 to $50. We saw gold go from 250 to 1,800. We saw copper go from 60 cents to $4. We saw uranium move up to 140. We saw oil go up to 140. We saw real estate prices take off. There was this huge inflation trade. And it wasn't, it started off as really an asset trade, because the market, the big institutions, the big money out there realized, hey, we've been buying crap. All we've been buying is business plans without any backing, like SPACs, for example. So they just got tired of it, and then they blew all this stuff out, driving the NASDAQ down, as I said, by 80%. And all that money flowed into real assets, real estate, oil, copper, silver, gold, and mining stocks, and so on. And I think we're halfway into this, and we've got a long ways to go yet.
So sometimes you joke around with me where you give me a little mentorship in a joking way about being able to navigate the emotions of especially investing in mining stocks, and you've tried to illustrate this longer term cycle and trend line to me. Do you think that that's one of the most important things for an investor to know about investing, specifically in silver and silver miners and these types of stocks?
I do, because they're very cyclical. We went through a pretty gut-wrenching bear market from 2012, where it started, all the way up to really 2016. That there's nothing different between the bear market from 97, call it, to 2001, but the bull market started in 2002, and it lasted until 2012, 10 years. But over that 10-year period, there was many corrections. There were several times over that 10-year period that the executives in the mining sector thought the bull market was over, but it wasn't. It just it corrected for 6 months, and sometimes gut-wrenching corrections, and then boom, it took off again. And that's the kind of thing that I think we're into right now. We're just in a short-term correction in a much larger bull market. But as I said, investors who invest in this space, this is a very risky, very cyclical, very volatile space, and you never know when the bull market's going to end. Despite my view that we're 10 years, it's going to be a 10-year long bull market, I could be wrong. So in that case, you have to take advantage of movements. If you're buy a 50-cent stock, and next thing you know it's $3, and that's happened many times to you, I know, Jake, and it happens to me as well. And then when it does, you just have to be disciplined. You sell part of your position, despite your views. You may think the stock's going to go to $10, but you have to be prudent. Take your money off the table, even take a little bit of profit off the table. Take your position down by 50% or 75%, and wait for that correction. If it doesn't correct and the stock keeps going, and you sell your balance at some other higher price, so be it. You've made a lot of money, and then go on to the next company. Just don't fall in love with your investments. And always, when you buy, pick your price and that you're willing to pay for it. And also, as you're buying, visualize the price that you want to sell it at. And a lot of people don't do that. And if you do that and remain disciplined, you'll find that you do quite well over time.
Interesting. That's kind of the, as you and I have been talking, do you think that's really the important thing that you've been wanting to convey to people? And when you watch my channel, and sometimes when you and I are talking, do you think that's kind of the real thing, if you're going to be investing in this, that you got to grasp?
I think so, because most people are not good sellers. Selling is the hardest thing to do. We're not trained to sell. We're trained to buy. where we have credit cards quite young, where we liked having toys, we liked having, stuff, right? So we're always looking to buy things. When we turn around and sell something, we often just give it away, because you don't have the energy to sell it. You got a Chesterfield that you want to get rid of, you put it on the street corner and someone will pick it up. It's kind of crazy, right? Or if you have a television, you want to buy a new television, give your old one away to your brother or something. So you don't expect to really get much from things that you buy. So you're not programmed that way. But investing, the only reason why you invest is to make a profit, and that's why we're in the stock market, to make a profit. We're not a charity. We're not giving money away to people. We want to make a profit. So in order to make a profit, you have rules in place and discipline, and you have to follow.
Powerful. So what do you think, as the CEO of First Majestic, and you're involved in Snowline and many projects, but all in all, you're a mining executive, and one of your areas of specialty has been in silver, in the silver market, and you've told me repeatedly that you truly believe that $100 silver is a possibility and an inevitability. And you said it's a common conversation that you have with Eric Sprott. And to many people, it sounds silly. And I'm curious what type of impact on your long-term, you call it this same, let's say, 10-year trend line, what impact do you think the global government infrastructure bills that I personally believe that's one of, they'll do everything, but I think there's going to be a lot of them. I think when the 4 trillion doesn't work, then there's going to be a 14 trillion one. And it seems so much of the trend line, at least now that renewables is a theme. China needs all this solar as well. Biden says he's going to do all this solar, electric vehicles. It seems like all the time now. Even Ford now says they have like an electric F-150 coming. What impact do you believe that this will have and has already had on the price of silver?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a whole Reddit Robinhood short sleeve play that took place over the last couple of months. Was quite interesting, because when I put First Majestic together back in 2002, I always assumed that supply-demand fundamentals would actually prevail and move the price. I predicted $50 silver when I put First Majestic together in 2002, and it did hit, of course, $50 in 2011. I didn't predict, mind you, that the price of silver would drop all the way down to $13 or $14, over the next several years, which was quite disruptive to the mining sector. We had to, reduce our spending. We had to, fire a lot of people. It was pretty tough for the mining sector to take, gold dropping from 1900 to close to 1,000, and silver dropping all the way down to 1450. But we got through it, and quite honestly, it's very much story driven. The demand for silver industrial grows at about 4 to 6% rate a year, and that's primarily driven by technology like solar panels, like all the new gadgets, computers, and all the ions, and that's going to continue. It's not going to come back. Human race wants to continue by itself. Governments are pushing different forms of electrification, away from oil and gas. All that's going to be fantastic for metals, and not just silver, but variety of different metals. Silver is a very, very tiny market, and that's why I'm so bullish on silver, is because some of these other metals like copper, that's a pretty big market. But silver, there's only 2020 numbers, we don't know exactly what they are yet, but we think there was about 750 million ounces of silver produced in 2020 worldwide. That's down now 4 consecutive years from a peak of 880 million ounces that was hit or reached in 2015, I believe. So 4 consecutive years of declines, and demand is increasing, and that falls off going backwards. So we're getting tighter and tighter and tighter in this very, very tiny market, less than what's 800 million times 25 bucks, you're in a, $23 billion market. How many times can that market fit into Apple? So it doesn't take much to move a market like silver. Unfortunately, it's very paper driven, and there's a lot of derivatives out there. But and that's what this whole Reddit movement is all about buying physical. And I'm coming to the belief now that it may not be the industrial demand that actually drives price to $100 an ounce. It actually may be the retail demand that just understands the importance of this metal. In fact, it is such a strategic metal, and it's necessary for everything that we do as human race, and people just want to own it.
Yeah, what correct me if I'm wrong, it's about 70% of silver annual is for industrial, and about 30 or so is from retail. And what I've wondered is something that I've heard Don Durrett, a guy I've had on the show, big silver advocate, and he was saying, well, what happens if the retail demand doubles and 70% of it is hogged by industry, but what if the 30% in retail goes to 40 or 42 or 43? And that's what you're saying. You're starting to think this long-term trend of this easy money and uncertainty about the economy, that might drive retail to be the thing that gives it the real leverage.
Yeah, because the banks are able to manage the market. Like they know the supply that's coming. They've got, we have, like the people we use to market or not market, but sell our metal. They have a pretty good idea of, what we're going to produce in 2021. We put out guidance in January, and we update our guidance in July, and the entire mining sector does the same thing. So the banks kind of know what's coming in the door. So they know what the price should. So if Sony phones up and says, hey, we need, 50 million ounces of silver delivered at these variety of ports around the world for the production of our products, JP Morgan or HSBC kind of know how to price it, right? So they'll give them a 12-month price. So they're taking a short position on that trade. And of course, Sony's expecting the delivery of this metal over the next 12 months. So it's now in the best interest of the banks to keep the market within a fairly tight range, because they don't want that trade, to cost them very much. So, they've got a pretty good handle on the supply-demand fundamentals of these markets. What really screws them up, like what happened in palladium, is they lost control over that market because they didn't anticipate the hedge fund and the retail demand. And because that's such a tiny market, it broke them, and it palladium went up 300%, over about a year. So will that happen in silver? I think it will. I think they will lose control of it, and I think it will be driven by retail.
So with First Majestic, I read some reports about you guys doing a share buyback program. You recently picked up a new mine in Nevada in the United States, as opposed to in Mexico. So it seems like business, must be pretty good right now in terms of cash flow in silver and stable prices, in this mid-20 range for a while. So give us an idea of what's going on in the buyback. You recently released about the buybacks as well as your pickup in Nevada.
Right. Yeah, the share buyback is a thing that we do every year. From a regulatory environment, it has to be updated every year. In 2020, in early 2020, we did buy back some shares because that during that major dip in the stock market, we spent a couple of dollars and bought back some stock. We haven't bought any back since, and nor do we have any short-term plans to do that. But if there is a stock market crash, as I suggested that there may be earlier today, of course, we'll be in the market and supporting the stock and buying back stock. I think that's very important. We also launched a dividend as well, which was quite interesting. That's effective January 2021. We're going to pay out 1% of our revenue. So as the metal price goes up in time, that dividend will increase. And actually, we'd like to increase the percentage as well. At 1%, it's a little bit on the low side. I'd like to see that up to 2%. over the next couple of years. So we'll see how that goes, and only time will tell. But it's nice to finally be on the dividend side of the market. There's a lot of investors out there that really like to have a little bit of dividend in the mail. So that starts. First dividend should be paid out, I think, in May. And then to your other comment regarding Jerritt Canyon, I put this company together 18 years ago, and always stuck, to Mexico. Very much focused on silver, and we're still focusing on silver. Don't get me wrong. Good silver mines are hard to find, and this particular asset, being in Nevada, what really attracted us, diversifying our portfolio to be in another jurisdiction, just rather than 100% in Mexico. And we're looking elsewhere as well. We're hoping to see other M&A transactions occur over the next 12 months. We're working on a few, but Jerritt Canyon is going to really bring a lot of extra gold for us, which is not too bad. It actually increases our production by 30% on a silver equivalency basis, for about 12% dilution. Eric Sprott becomes a very large shareholder, which is a good thing, and he's very supportive of the company, and we're very pleased to have it more involved first invested.
So if you're looking for more opportunities, is it in America? Is it anywhere? Is it just places outside of Mexico? You said you're anticipating or hoping for more over the next 12 months.
Well, we've been looking. We always look. As I said, the company's 18 years in, and I'm not a geologist or an engineer, so I'm kind of guy. So punches holes in the ground, trying to find a mine. I like to buy stuff. That's what I've done, what we've done as a team. And we've been quite successful doing it over the last several years, and we continue to do that. So this Jerritt Canyon is a great asset that's going to increase our production, our revenue substantially, and our profit substantially. What comes next, I can't tell you. But, I'm quite confident there will be enough.
So right now in the world, it's an interesting time, I guess, as a way to summarize it. There's an awful lot of people in my country that are very behind on their rent. They're very behind on their mortgage. There's a lot of people that have lost their business. There's a lot of people that don't have a job. And, that's just in America. A lot of the world, especially in developing countries, is through tourism. And in a lot of ways, that's been gone. And so often we don't even factor in the non-America, non-Canada. And so I always try to, when I have someone that's, really successful on like you, I want to, understand a little bit more about the ways that you are thinking. And for someone listening to this right now, that's realizing we're in this cycle of free or easy money. There's a devaluation of their purchasing power. You're seeing, all types of examples of that. So somebody says, oh, look, I need to make more money. I need to, either grow my business or get ahead more in order to preserve my freedoms. And what do you think are some of the most important things with regards to that?
Wow. I love your questions sometimes, Jake. It surprises me how complacent the human population is. We have, governments around the world locking human beings in their homes and preventing them from, circulating and communicating and socializing with other human beings. And, that's not human. That's animals, are put in cages. Humans aren't put in cages. Yet the governments are treating us like animals and just wanting to put us in cages, and yet the human race is just sitting back accepting it. I think Jim Rickards is probably the only person I've actually seen speak publicly about these lockdowns and the lunacy behind these lockdowns, and then the fact that they're creating, well, of course, what you said, bankruptcies and poverty. But family violence, drug abuse, the saying of, my COVID belly, There's a saying now flying around due to the increase in alcohol consumption. These are not good things, and this is caused by these crazy politicians that think that these are good ideas. I was listening to Tucker Carlson the other day on Fox, and they tried to figure out where this 6 foot distancing came from, right? Because they just came up with this, social distancing, and it's got to be 6 feet. And they found that this doctor from 1859, I think it was, came up with this plan because there was, I forget the disease that was circulating around at the time. It was tuberculosis or something along those lines. Go back and, you guys can find it on the internet, I'm sure. But it was quite fascinating that all of a sudden, 150 years later, 170 years later, that our technology has not advanced. I guess we're as stupid today as we were back then. That the politicians just say, oh, 6 feet, it's got to be 6 feet, right? And then anyways, we could talk forever, but the whole thing behind it is I've been tested for COVID-19, I think 20 times in the last 6 months, just because of my movements and so on. So it's pretty nuts. But anyways.
So do you think, how important is it to be able to control what you can control and kind of turn the volume down, as someone that runs a big company and you're really productive and successful with all this going on, and there's so much drama going on, and sometimes it can feel negative, or maybe it makes people are just afraid for what's happening. They don't know what to expect. How are you able to channel your energy in a creative and productive way? Whereas as some people, it's there's too much going on.
It's a great question. I've figured this out too late in life. And when I is in my early 40s, 42, 43, I think it was, when I finally figured out that I can't control anything other than what I think and say. In my 20s and 30s, when I put together my prior company, copper company, First Quantum Minerals, in '92, I had a bit of a reputation of being a bit of a hard nose and a bit of a control freak. And I was not the easiest person to work with. And when I put First Majestic together, it was 10 years later, and I was obviously somewhat more mature. But when I realized the fact that I couldn't control other people, this huge weight came on my shoulders, and I was able to smile, and I was able to wake up with a smile in the morning. I was able to really focus on really the important things of the day. And I read a book called Now, and there's some other books I read as well. And I really realized that, I just got to focus on today, and I can't really worry about yesterday, and I can't really worry about the future. I can plan for the future. I could think about what the future looks like, but I can't worry about it because I can't affect it. So,
do you think that that's made you more successful and productive?
Absolutely, because it calms the mind, right? Your mind's not busy, flying around, worrying about stuff and thinking about crazy things. And then because I suffered, I know a lot of other people suffer from what's called a busy mind, whereby you're having a tough time sleeping, you're having a tough time focusing on stuff and really concentrating on the important things. And if you just realize and take a step back and say, hey, look, all I can do is control what I think and say, it's quite a relief.
Awesome. So what's your expectations moving forward when you're looking at the world right now? It's a precarious situation to be in, and then people are wondering, is everything gonna sell off again? Is the Fed gonna get involved and stop interest rates from rising? They're just, how many more stimulus are they gonna have to do? What is your expectation? Do you think we just really step into this MMT, more money immediately, print as much of it basically until there's some real tangible effects in people, maybe everyday people losing less confidence in currency? Do you think this trend just accelerates into this?
It's a pretty interesting phenomenon that we're witnessing, right? Because there was a time, and not really that long ago, even a decade ago, where currency was looked at as something valuable to hold on to, right? So you have a $100 bill in your pocket, and you go, wow, that's like, this is great. Um, um, so there was a perceived or a believed value, on world currencies. As the governments now and the governments woke up at some point, and I don't know sure who came up with the plan, but they realized that what they're doing is there's really no value to this money, right? It all they learned it from the United States, and they learned it because look, if the United States wants to build a battleship, they need to build it in Korea, because they're good at building battleships. Korea is going to take those U.S. dollars because everything's priced in U.S. dollars, so they've had an advantage when it comes to building out their military and building out their power throughout the world because they've just been using paper. So now all these other governments have said, hey, look, we want to play that same game. So if the Canadian government wants to build a highway or build a bridge, they just print a bunch of Canadian dollars, and there's no recourse because it means nothing. There's no value to it. All they're doing is paying people for that labor. And as long as those people accept that paper for that labor, then the whole system keeps going. So, at what point do people just say, look, this paper is not as good as it used to be? And does that mean we're going to Weimar Republic? I don't know. That seems crazy to me. I don't know if we'll ever get quite that far, but there has to be some point in time where people just say enough is enough, and we don't accept your paper anymore. Maybe it'll be another 10 or 20 years before it happens, but what the governments are proving to us is that debts do not matter. Debts are irrelevant, and they're going to keep giving people money. They're going to continually get into debt, and they don't care. They think that they already know that they can't pay back the debt anyway. So I suppose if if your credit card is run up to 10 grand and you're unemployed, and then another credit card shows up in the mail from another bank that doesn't know you're not employed, and it has another $10,000 limit, you're going to run out of as well. So you're going to just keep living on credit until eventually the banks figure out that you've got 10 credit cards out there, all at 10 grand each, and you've got no income and you can't pay the money back. Well, when does that happen for governments? I don't know, but that's why I'm so focused on precious metals. I think that you need gold and silver in your portfolio.
So do you expect this trend to accelerate here in 2021? Do you think the theme is going to be just basically more stimulus packages and infrastructure packages, and eventually we'll see a little bit of that movement start to really push the next leg up in precious metals?
I think it's going to be sentiment driven first. And because it's always sentiment that drives markets. What takes Tesla up to where it went, or where it went, or Netflix, or any of the fangs. They went there because it was a momentum trade, based on sentiment, not any kind of valuation. So there's a view right now in the marketplace that you touched on, about interest rates. So the interest rates, some people say they're going to 1.9, other people say they're going to 2, other people say they're going to 2.5. I've even heard 3. If it ever got up to 3, I think we'd see a crazy market crash. But nevertheless, so the market has to wake up to the fact, where is these rates going to peak? And that's what's been putting a lid on gold. Because of this debate that's going on. So you've got an inflation debate, a deflation debate, and an interest rate debate. So as long as that debate continues, gold is either going to go sideways or have a negative bias to it. And that's what we've seen in the last few months. I think we're going into a fairly strong quarter, Q2. I think, with retail sales and real estate prices and inflation, but I think that's going to roll over in probably Q3, Q4. And then the market will wake up. And wherever rates settle, who knows? I don't have a crystal ball, but rates could settle at 2% by Q3. That could be the top right there. And then after that, where the market's going to wake up and say, okay, this is done. Gold could be, pick a number, 1650, 1700, maybe it'll be 1600. Who knows where it'll be by the time the market turns. But when it does, and that sentiment changes, you're going to see interest rates plunge back towards zero over the next couple of years. And that's when you're going to see a fire lit under gold and silver into 2021 and into 2023. That's
So, do you think that they'll ever step in and stop the rates from rising?
Yeah, oh, for sure. They haven't yet. Well, you saw the Europeans, the EU stepped in to their bond market just the other day, and then the Japanese, of course, I just read this morning that they went into their stock market and bought something like 50 billion U.S. equivalent dollars worth of stock over the last couple of weeks. So the governments, which is crazy, but the governments are in there manipulating as much as they can. The U.S. has kind of taken a backseat approach because they're kind of watching the markets and so on. But what the Europeans do, what the Japanese do, is just a precursor of what the United States is going to do.
What's the end game for gold and silver out of this type of long-term trend that you've illustrated?
And that's a big question. That's the $1 million question, isn't it? We all have our views. I don't know. I just can't imagine us getting back into a gold standard. I just think it's just it'd be so much against the whole governmental system that we're currently in. I don't remember the gold standard. I was in my early, I guess I was 11 or 12 when we got off the gold standard. But I do remember silver coins in my pocket, which is kind of cool. I remember buying a Coca-Cola for 5 cents with a silver dime. But unfortunately, I didn't collect enough of them. But whether I don't think we'll get back there, but I do think that we'll get into some kind of a reset whereby governments, and I'm super anti-world government, but I think that that's kind of the direction that we're going. And I think they're going to pick a basket of commodities and currencies that will be, Rickards calls it SDRs, but they'll come up with some fancy name, maybe world dollar or something like that. And we're probably 20 or 30 years away from that. But I think ultimately that's where we're going. That's what the governments want. They want totalitarianism. They want more socialism. They want more control. And that's where they're going. And unfortunately, they're probably going to win that battle.
So that's your way you envision this idea of a reset. In a process like this, do you think that essentially this trend continues, central banks and the big money in the world continues to essentially buy everything, and then it gets to a point that essentially just debts are forgiven, and then it's like, hey, here's our new currency, debts are forgiven. And then you basically have this world where this wealth transfer has been complete, where there are very few people are left with wealth.
That's right. And the middle class is basically, devastated. You've got the majority of the people that are poor, who knows what percentage, but, the vast amount of people poor living in government housing, being paid by, getting their electronic, currencies in a wallet, to go buy their food and all that kind of crap. And then you've got, the elite that, are kind of in their big homes and kind of overlooking things. And I'd rather be on that side. So, hopefully with my investments in gold and silver, I'll be able to protect myself and my family, but who knows?
So how far away from that do you think we are?
Hopefully a long ways away. I'm just really not encouraged with the direction of these governments. Well, one thing though that does give me some encouragement, we got a lot of old farts running this world, and when I say that, people my age, like I'm 61, and So a lot of the people that kind of run the governments, run the world, are kind of in the 60s and 70s, and they're slowly dying off. We saw Cheney die off, and a few others, and I'm not going to name names because I may never be allowed on the internet again, but there's a few others I would like to see kind of go their way. And as this process occurs, which is going to take another 10 or 20 years, we have a pretty smart millennial group, and we saw, there's whole Reddit crowd going back to that whole concept. They put their foot in their sand, and they made a statement, right? And it rattled a lot of people. And then, people are now waking up to the fact that, hey, this millennial group is pissed off, and then they might want to make change. And maybe they could come in, these the old guard or the current guard will continually screw up the system for the next 10 or 20 years, feeding the bankers, and making sure the elite are the only ones making money. And then they'll disappear and get replaced by a new group of younger, smarter, energetic people that will rewrite the system. And maybe this goes to the fourth turning, that Howe has written. I'm sure you've heard of the fourth turning before, but he says we're in a fourth turning right now, and this kind of period can last 10 or 20, 30 years, and coming out of it, going into the first turning, is a very positive part of the human race. So when I forget exactly when he says that's going to happen, I think he's called it 2035, I believe, in his book. But so we got a bit of a ways to go.
So what do you think is the expectation that First Majestic and the silver experts have for 2021 silver price?
Well, I've been predicting silver prices for almost 20 years. So sometimes I've been right, sometimes I've been wrong. Though I've been wrong a lot over the last 5 years. But look, I'm a big ratio guy. I know there's a lot of people out there that think ratios are bullshit, but I think that supply demand fundamentals are what ultimately prevails in any pricing of anything, whether it's a stock or whether it's a commodity, doesn't matter. You can manipulate markets, and then you can have short-term periods of broken markets like GameStop, for example. But generally speaking, over longer terms, supply-demand fundamentals prevail. And currently, the demand, or the supply for silver is at 8-to-1 ratio. So for every 1 ounce of gold miners are mining worldwide, we're only mining 8 ounces of silver worldwide. And that's a pretty shocking number, considering we're trading close to 70-to-1. So I think we're going to see ratio collapse. We've seen it before. We've seen it a few times. Back in the 70s, we saw it in 2011 when the ratio got down to 32. I think it's going to get much closer to 8. It may never hit 8, but even if it gets down to 20 or 25 or 15, pick a number. Pick your gold price. Call it $2,000 gold or $3,000 gold, divided by 20 or 25 or 30, and that's your silver price. And that's why I think we're going to see triple-digit silver. And it's pretty easy for me to come up with that number. I don't think it's too much of a stretch.
So I know we're coming down to the end of the hour here. Let me conclude by just give us a little bit of what we've had Snowline, Nicholas on our show. Give us an idea of why you're excited about Snowline and your goals with that.
Sure. Well, first off, I'm founder and CEO of First Majestic Silver. I put that company together, and it's my full-time job, or more than my full-time job. And then I put together a company called First Mining Gold in 2015, which has quite an amazing gold portfolio, a exploration development gold portfolio, primarily in Eastern Canada. I'm the chairman of that company. And then I do occasionally assist companies to go public. And one company I took public a few years back was Silver One. I think you're a shareholder of that company, if I recall. and I'm still, fairly substantial shareholder of that company. Silver in Nevada, early stage exploration, needs a lot of time and work. But Greg, the CEO, is a good guy. And then this opportunity came to me about a year ago, this Yukon portfolio of gold projects that I just really fell in love with. Some great technical people behind it. Quinton Henning, who you may know, and then the family, Scott and Ron Burdell, spent 30 years staking this land, based on some Carlin-style geological viewpoints, some theories on geology, mind you. So I assisted them to stake additional land, and then I assisted them to go public, which the company went public, I guess, about a month ago now. We were very lucky to get Paul Matisek on as an advisory. Many people probably know Paul. One of the things, very, very good entrepreneur, very well-known guy in the mining sector. Quinton Henning jumped on as well as advisor. We have Paul's son, Nicholas Matisek, on as CEO. Scott took on the COO position. We had Eric Sprott, who came in fairly large and helped finance the company side by side with me, and Quinton as well, and some of his associates. So we have a great shareholder base. We came out of the gate with about $8 million in the bank, and we hope to be drilling sometime this summer. So there'll be a lot of news coming out. I'm very optimistic. I love the portfolio. It's very grassroots, super risky. But if they're right in their geological theories, which I'm willing to finance and back, I think it's worth the risk myself. But I'm one of these guys that take a lot of risks. So people have to be aware, when you're investing in companies like this, just be aware that you could lose all your money. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I don't think it will. But we've got a great group of people around. We think we got great assets, and so we got a good start.
All right. So in conclusion, for everyone listening, make sure you hit the like button on either side right over there if you want to see Keith back on more, or there's some important questions that you love Keith to address. I'll pool them for the next one, so leave those right there down below. And Keith, let me know one thing that you are excited about, grateful about, looking forward to right now in 2021.
The end of the lockdowns, the not having to wear masks in public, and just getting outdoors and rubbing shoulders with people, and having a beer with buddies.
So we'll have Keith's Twitter right there down below. We'll have First Majestic website, Snowline, and the rest down there below in the description for you to check that out. And so we want to thank Keith for coming on, and make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jake.